Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we're pleased to tell you we have got the awesome IONZ Taiyo case to take a look at and see if it's actually suitable for your next PC build. Keep watching to find out more. Okay, so in today's video we'll be taking a look at the IONZ Taiyo. Now this is an extremely affordable case, coming in at the moment in the UK at just under £40. Yeah, you heard that right, just under £40 for an ATX size case with included two 200mm addressable RGB fans and also a rear 120mm fan. This case has got a lot of things up its sleeve which make it really appealing to a lot of budget builders out there, and also a lot of mainstream builders as well. Tons and tons of features, lots and lots of flexibility, and a really great case design. So in this video we're going to do a strip down, go through all the individual components, and then we'll go through after, take a look at the RGB lighting effects, and then at the end you can make up your decision whether or not this is going to be suitable for your next PC build. So starting off with the specifications, as you can see this is a kind of mid-tower case suitable for extended ATX, ATX, micro ATX and ITX motherboard should you feel the need to put one in there. Obviously I would suggest really eATX or ATX would be the preferable boards to put inside of here without it looking a little bit weird, but yeah, each to their own. As I said a little bit earlier, it does come included with these two magnificent 200mm addressable RGB fans up front and also the 120 in the rear. Sadly there isn't a RGB controller as such in here and a fan hub. There is a means of transferring the digital addressable RGB to your motherboard, so if you've got a motherboard that supports it, you can plug in that standard 3-pin 5V header straight to your motherboard and take control of your lighting from there. If you haven't, not a problem, there is a button on the top which you can press to cycle through the various colours and change it to your appropriate scheme. As you can probably tell already, the case comes with a really nice tempered glass side panel which has got a very light smoke tint to it, and it's actually a really decent piece of glass, about 4mm thick, so a bit better than what we generally tend to get on these budget cases. Taking a closer look at the side panel, you can see at the moment I've got this plastic protection on there to stop it from getting scratched, etc. But there is actually a really nice black trim around the outside edge, so if when you're putting it into the case you maybe get your greasy fingerprints on it, it's fine because it will just show from behind. You can just wipe off the front, no problems there at all. The side panel itself is held on with two captive thumb screws, which is always really a welcome addition, especially at this price point. After undoing the screws, very simple, all you need to do is just pull the panel off to the rear and it comes off really easily. This is actually a really heavyweight panel. I was surprised how heavy it actually is. Again, we've got 4mm thick tempered glass and a metal frame with some foam padding top and bottom. With the side panel removed, we can get a closer look inside. Now the layout of this is a really great layout. If you've ever seen cases such as the GameMax F15 or the Lianli 215, then this is going to look extremely familiar to you. The layout is very similar, although it is a slightly more squat design, I would say. So it's a little bit shorter, not quite as deep, and not quite as wide. But other than that, the layout is pretty much identical. Some of the key features of the layout, so at the bottom we've got this nice mesh. So you can, if you want to, you can stick a couple of fans on there if you want to, 120mm fans, although probably you really wouldn't need to because you've got these huge fans up front. There's also a nice cutout towards the front there, so if you wanted to put a 360mm radiator in there, certainly you can do, but obviously you may have to take a look at the front fans to work out how that's going to work in a kind of push-pull configuration. Also on the bottom, a really nice feature which I absolutely adore, and that is there is a cutout, as you can see just up here in front. So that is for putting your GPU power through. So you can run it through underneath nice and tidily and have it coming straight up into a graphics card, making for an extremely clean looking build. Also part of that clean build is going to be the 3 access points at the bottom of this mesh section in the basement. So one you could use for HD audio, maybe the middle one for things like USB connections, and the front one probably like a USB 3 and your front IO panel. So for most boards there's going to be absolutely plenty of room to get your cables through. Moving slightly up from there, so we've got some pass-throughs for the power cables and graphics card cables if you've got a slightly longer graphics card. Now actually talking about graphics cards in here, you can get absolute whoppers in here, up to around about 350mm if you don't put anything in front. Realistically, around about 300mm is going to be ideal and come up to kind of like this kind of level, absolutely fine. CPU coolers, tower coolers supported up to 163mm, so that pretty much covers most bases apart from crazy things like the Corsair A500, which is just ridiculously big, but certainly pretty much most 120mm tower coolers on the market and 140mm tower coolers going to be no problem at all. Also on the back, we've got this really nice big cutout section here. So again, if you are putting a custom cooler in, or if you're struggling to remove the stock cooler on your AMD CPU, which actually we have done a video on recently, which you can check out up here. Loads of room, loads of access points. And also at the top, there's 3 push throughs as well. So if you're putting some fans in the top, which you certainly can do if you wanted to, or even AIO, then you've got loads of access to put the cables through to make it an extremely clean looking build, as I said before. Going back to the top section, so you can, if you want to, on the top section, put in a 240mm radiator. 280 is probably going to be pushing it a little bit, but it certainly is a little bit offset and it is raised slightly. So there is a pretty decent gap between the top of the motherboard and also where the fan and or radiator are going to go. Fans, you can put in 2 120s or 2 140s very easily. If you're going for AIO, I would say realistically a 240 is probably what you want to be aiming for. Talking of fans, going to the back to the front. Now, if for some crazy reason you wanted to replace these 200mm fans, which realistically you probably won't, because I guess this is kind of like the major selling point of this. The look, the fans is really what most people are going to go for. But of course, if you want to, you can take out both of those fans, and you can, if you want to, replace them with 3 140s, 3 120s, or combinations of those types of things. Overall, loads and loads of options for cooling. I would have liked to have seen on the back where we've got this stock 120mm addressable RGB fan. Sadly, on this section it is 120mm only. There's a little bit of adjustment height-wise, but sadly you can't put a 140 in there, which is a little bit of a shame, but certainly not a deal breaker. Another thing which for some people may be a good thing or a bad thing, it depends how you look at it and how much you're spending on your power supply, but certainly power supply wise, we have got this big cutout here. It is becoming more and more of a common thing in a lot of cases these days. I personally would have liked to have seen just a clean line all the way across and have that blanked off. Then again, I do tend to use quite cheap branded power supplies, but certainly, yeah, it is one of those things, but I thought I'd mention it. Moving around to the rear of the case, as we said, so we've got the 120mm fan here, which is again addressable RGB. A little bit of ventilation also at the top here, which is always a good sign. If you've got a little bit going on here, that normally means that you're going to have room for radiators and extra fans and not have to squeeze your fingers in too badly to try and get to that dreaded EPS connector in the top of your motherboard. Standard IO plate cutout there, all nicely rounded off, so no cut fingers, which is awesome. Moving down to the blanking plate section, this is where it kind of goes a little bit wrong. Not entirely, but it does go wrong a little bit. Most of these are those actual bend out ones which you fold out and then you have to throw away. The top one included is actually replaceable, which is yeah, a step in the right direction, I guess. And also you've got 2 slots here, so if you did want to vertically mount a GPU in this case, you certainly could do, although realistically I think being that it's only a 2 slot here and it is relatively close to that glass, is possibly not going to be the best solution for cooling, but it will look cool as hell. Moving down to the very bottom, we've got the space for our power supply. With this, you can put in pretty much any power supply you like. There is a drive cage in there, which is removable. So obviously, depending if your power supply is absolutely huge, you may want to take that rail out, but most power supplies are going to fit in there, no problems at all, as you can probably see from some of the cutaways and some of the B-roll we've already filmed. Moving around to the back of the case, yeah, not the most exciting panel in the world, but what is exciting is the screws. Again, we've got captive thumb screws, which I am a really big fan of. There's a little lever on the back here, or handle, so you can just pull it off nice and easily. And the panel itself is a little bit on the flimsy side, but yeah, when it's actually attached, it's firm as all hell. So now we can take a look at the back and see what's going on and see how easy it's going to be for cable management. And actually, I think it's actually going to be pretty easy. You've got a decent amount of depth there, just around about 3/4 of an inch of depth there for cable management, which is absolutely fine. Also, again, you can see here we've got the 3 holes there for passing through your cables for your fans, or possibly from your radiator, all that kind of stuff. Addressable RGB, PWM, all that kind of thing. No worries there. And fitting through a 8-pin EPS connector in there is going to be an absolute piece of cake. Moving down again, you can see clearly the cutout there for the back of the CPU. A couple of flat areas here, which this is something which you may want to use to maybe put a SSD or mechanical drive. There aren't actually mountings there as such, although there are some screw holes, so you could probably jerry-rig something on there. Realistically, I think if you want to put a decent amount of 2.5-inch drives in here, a little bit of Velcro or double-sided tape, and you could stick a couple of drives on there if you wanted to. Likewise, the same with these sections here. Depending where your cables are running through, you may want to use that, because when it comes down to drive storage, there isn't a great deal. So realistically, with the drive cage, which I'll take out now, the drive cage is removable. It's nice and easy to take out. So there's some rubber grommets on the bottom. Really nice design, works exceptionally well, and obviously being rubber grommets, it's going to isolate some of those vibrations if you're using mechanical drive. 3.5-inch drive on the bottom and on the top if you want to. So for the top one, you just put the drive on top and screw into it from underneath, then put your second drive underneath, screws through the side. Nice and easy to do. If you want to, again, you could put a 2.5-inch drive on the top very easily. There are screw holes for that. And also you could put a 2.5-inch drive in there on the side and just put maybe one screw in. Generally they tend to be quite lightweight. So yeah, two 2.5 drives, two 3.5 drives. And that is essentially it for kind of hard drive management. There isn't anything else really going on here, which is a slight downside, but realistically, I think these days, a lot of people tend to go M.2 for their main storage, for maybe Windows drive and possibly another drive on the board. So that's 2 drives. Are you going to need a third one? I think most people will probably end up just taking this out and leaving it out to aid cable management. And talking of cable management, what cables have we got to actually manage? Well, there's actually a little bit of a rat's nest going on here, which is primarily down to the addressable RGB and the fans. So a downside of this particular case and its price point is the fact that the fans are fixed speed fans. Yeah, and they're powered by a Molex cable, which is not ideal, but generally you can get more power through a Molex than you can through a SATA cable, so at least it's got that going for it. Although these fans don't really take a great deal of power. The front fans, I would estimate they spin at an RPM of in the region of about 800 to 900 RPM. The rear fan is a fixed RPM again, around about 1200 RPM I think. Noise-wise, I'll let you be the judge of that a little bit later when we fire it up, but certainly for me, it doesn't seem very distracting, and against the rest of the ambience of the room, other PCs, etc., it doesn't stand out as being particularly noisy. But some people may see this as not being PWM controlled as being a real downer. Of course, obviously, if you want to have PWM controlled fans in a very similar setup to this, then you could always go for something like the GameMax F15 or the Langley 215, which essentially are pretty much identical apart from the way those fans are set up. So potentially you could save yourself somewhere between 20 and 40 pounds on going with this setup over the other two that I mentioned. So yeah, some you win, some you lose, but potentially you could save a ton of money. So let's take a closer look at the rat's nest that is the addressable RGB setup here. So all of these are actually daisy chained. So the 3 fans all have got daisy chainable connections. They don't have separate addressable RGB and speed for obvious reasons because they're fixed speed, all that kind of stuff. But there is actually a pass-through, which is our 5V 3-pin, which I said before. So again, you can plug that into your motherboard, press and hold the button on the front, and it transfers the control from the RGB from the onboard or kind of built-in controller to the fans through to your motherboard. So yeah, it's not ideal, but certainly I don't think it's a massive downer, but yeah, you may think otherwise. Let me know if you do in the comments. Taking the RGB cables out of the way and taking a look at what else we've got here. So for the front I/O, you've got your USB 3.0, which terminates into a single connector on the top of the case. We've also got our HD audio connector. Would have been nice to have seen those being blacked out to the very ends, but that's a very minor thing. And the same goes with the USB 2.0, which terminates into 2 ports on the top of the case. Also, we've got a reset button on the case, which is actually been repurposed in this particular instance and is connected to the RGB setup. So you press the reset button and it basically goes through the color cycle for the fans, or again, press and hold it to transfer to the motherboard control. Other than that, we've got the usual suspects, so power LED, hard drive LED, and power switch. That is pretty much it. Moving on to the bottom, so we've got pretty much a full-length filter on here. Sadly, it's not one of those ones which are plastic. It's just a metal one, a metal mesh, which you can just take out pretty easily. Putting it back in isn't quite so easy, so we'll do that off camera. But here you can see there's a lot of ventilation, and also you can see the area for the hard drive, so you can get an idea of how that works. So again, we've got those lugs, which you can fit in either the front section or the back section, which will give you a little bit more room between those fans and your drives should you have them installed. And you can go either forward or back a little bit on that as well. So you can really move it around a little bit if you wanted to. Also, you've got the vented section there for the power supply, which is yeah, pretty cool and what you'd expect to see. Again, these kind of filters aren't the best on the world, but they get the job done, and I'd rather them spend money elsewhere on the case and the design, maybe better tempered glass or better metal, than a better filter. While we're down in this section, obviously you've got the feet there which raise the case up about 1 inch off the deck, which is excellent, and they've got those foam pads rather than the rubber ones, so if you move it around on the desk, it doesn't leave those horrible black marks. Well done. Taking a look at the top of the case, so we've got the traditional removable mesh, which is magnetic around the sides, and we've got the hexagonal mesh on the top here for letting airflow through, and as you can see, you've got mounting options there for 120s or 140s, one front, one back, so yeah, No issues there, all pretty decent. When it comes to I/O, we've got the, like I said, got the power button, we've got the repurposed reset switch, which is now for RGB, but obviously if you don't plug in the RGB, then you can just use that as a reset switch. USB 2.0, microphone, headphone, another USB 2.0, and a USB 3.0. So 3 USB ports, absolutely fine for most people. Next up, we'll take a look at the accessories included. So not a great deal of accessories, but you get a bunch of cable ties. There is a BIOS speaker, which is actually really handy these days with systems that don't boot up first time. So you can do a BIOS check and hear the bleep, see what's going on. Also, you've got blacked out screws, and also there's an adapter as well to go onto a screwdriver to tighten up the bolts for your motherboard mountings. Yep, pretty good. Ticks all the boxes I need. So let's go back to the front of the case, which is really the real showpiece of this case. Taking the front panel off, pretty simple to do. All you need to do is grab the pull handle on the front, and this whole section comes out and gives you the huge mesh section, which is yeah, really cool. I might try and put the Noctua 200mm fans in here. I don't think they're going to go. They don't really seem to fit anything, but certainly we will give that a go when we go around and do the build in this thing. Taking the front off gives you access to these massive fans. So again, these are the 200mm fans, addressable RGB, static speed around about 800 to 900 RPM. So they are going to move a ton of air. And actually I have done some other testing with this, just with a power supply in there to get some airflow idea. And yeah, it moves a ton of air, which is to be expected. They're huge fans. Whether or not they are going to be everybody's choice, again, the PWM thing for me isn't a massive deal. It would have been nice. Generally, with most of these types of cases, like the Lian Li, which I suppose that was a little bit different, but especially the GameMax F15, normally with that one, I'll just grab the remote control, stick it on the stock speed, and just let it do its thing. Very rarely do I ever get involved with actual changing the fan speeds on that, unless I'm doing some sort of testing, but otherwise, I just leave them as they are and let them get on and do what they need to do. Of course, like I said, if you wanted to, it is really easy, just 4 screws, take those out, and you can replace them if you want to at a later date with 3 140s or 3 120s should you feel the need to. Although I think if you do change the fans out, it may kind of actually destroy the whole look of the case because of the way that this plastic is in the front panel here. We've got these cutouts, so you might find that if you've got a central fan there, it's kind of most of it's going to be blocked off. So I think realistically, probably sticking with these. Obviously, if you want to, you can switch these out for 200mm addressable RGB fans with PWM. You can pick them up at various places. I know places like CCL and Scan have sold them for around about £10 to £15. So if you want to at a later date, if it really is bothering you, then of course you can replace these and upgrade it a little bit. So I think that's enough talking about it. Let's get a power supply in there and you can actually see what it looks like. Okay, so there you go. There you can see the PC. We've now got it lit up. Well, not the PC, the case, obviously. There's a severe lack of PC in here. But you get an idea of what the lighting is like, and you've probably seen it from some of the B-roll already, because we've had this thing up and running already. But I'll be quiet now so you can actually hear what the noise of the fans is like. It's not too bad. You can definitely hear the whooshing of air going through that mesh, which is obviously completely understandable. I think for most people it's going to be absolutely fine. There will be those of you out there that are absolute purists and want to have that granular control over your fans, which, don't get me wrong, I totally understand. Ultimately, it comes down to the price. The fact that this is less than 40 quid at the moment, yeah, you're getting an absolute boatload of stuff for your money. You really are. The case quality itself, I can't fault it. All the metal, all of the fixings, everything, there's no kind of rounding off of screws, etc. There's no jagged edges. It's just an exceptionally well-built chassis. The fans, again, yeah, possibly not to everyone's taste, but I think from a lot of people, if you're just doing a quick reshell of a PC to maybe flip it on eBay or maybe on Facebook Marketplace, that kind of thing, this is the sort of thing which grabs attention. It really does. And cooling wise, just putting your hand in there, you can feel there's a ton of air passing through there. It is insane. Now we will be doing a build in this coming up, so there will be a follow-up video to this, and we will be putting in some relatively warm components like the Ryzen 7 1700X, which is a slightly older one but still does get warm, and something like a GTX 1070, that kind of thing, just to give you an idea of what it could be like with your own build. Obviously, if you want to, you can put in things which are a lot newer or a lot older. The choice is entirely up to you. But I think it's actually a really nice design. It seems to work very well. Changing the colors is nice and easy. Just press that button on the top and you can cycle through the various color schemes. To be completely honest, there isn't a great deal of choice when it comes to colors. So you've got the rainbow puke, you've got this color chase fade thing. I don't even know what you'd call that. That just goes through, again, various other RGB types. Then you've got your fade, so it fades from red to green to blue to yellow to red, etc., etc., and goes through on that. Then you've got the kind of the chase method going on. Then that just goes through the individual colors. Then we've got another kind of chase mode. So yeah, it's what you kind of expect. You've also got statics. So if there is a particular color that you want, I know this is a question actually we get asked an awful lot about these cases that have got built-in RGB. Can I set it to white? Can I set it to red? Can I set it to blue? Well, yes, you can. So you've got red, you've got green, you've got blue, you've got yellow, you've got a pale blue, you've got kind of like a pinky magenta, I would call that. Then you've got your gigabyte yellow, or orange as is otherwise known. Then you've got a white, and the white actually looks really good. So if you're going for a black and white sort of chromatic style build, this is going to look awesome. Going back then, it goes into the traditional rainbow puke. But I gotta be honest with you, I really like this case. The whole setup, for me, just works. It's got a really nice look. This front panel just looks, I don't know, there's something about it. I am a big sucker for these 200mm fans. I really, really am. It's just a really nice look that I like a lot. The 120mm fan at the back, as you can see, just synchronizes really nicely. It's not as if it's like really out. You do find that some cases where they've got slightly different case fan size setups, the one at the back looks weird because it's doing like a different color cycle. They seem to have managed to actually get it to sync pretty well, considering there's obviously more RGB LEDs in the larger fans than there is in the back, but it still seems to match up pretty nicely. So I'm actually really excited to do a build on this. Hopefully you are equally excited to see me do it, and if you are, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the channel icon to be notified of future video releases. But let me know what you think about this one in the comment section. I'm actually genuinely interested. If you do want to pick up this, or you want to get more information on it, I will put some links in the video description. We've got it from the guys over at IONZ. They sent it to us free of charge for review purposes. That hasn't influenced my my decision or my kind of thoughts on this case. You guys know me by now. I say it as it is. If it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad. If it's indifferent, I'll give you both sides of the story. But for me, for 40 quid, just wow. You can pick it up on places like Amazon, eBay. eBay, from what I can tell at the moment, they are doing free international shipping in various areas. So I think that might be just from the US eBay. Again, we'll put all those details in the video description below. Also there as well, they are starting a new site as well, which is pcgamingcases.co.uk, which not only does IONZ, the full range of IONZ cases, as they are the main importer into the United Kingdom, but they're doing a ton of other cases as well, from the likes of Corsair, Gigabyte, you name it. Think of a case manufacturer and they should have you covered. So we're hopefully going to be working on some links and some deals with them as time goes on. So do keep an eye on that and check out the links in the video description. It does certainly help the channel. But I think that's going to wrap this one up. Overall, again, for 40 quid or thereabouts, I honestly don't think you can do much better. We've got another case as well, which is of the same chassis design, but with a slightly different outlook on the front, which is the Kensno. This is the Taiyo, both of them very similar as in structurally, but very different in terms of fans and the overall look at the front. So stay tuned to see that one as well. And I think that's going to wrap this one up. So I've been Mike, this is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.